Good afternoon on this overcast Portland Monday, August 23rd. We appreciate those of you who are with us in the virtual space today for this special meeting of the Historic Albina Advisory Board. We thank you for your willingness to be responsive and to continue in the work even on short notice as we move forward. I was conferring with most of the HAAB members would be in this space today. So just want to give a couple of moments. We can go to the next slide, Miss Natalie. Many of you all should be familiar with me. I'm Erica Warren, just one part of Tri-Excellence. Dr. Stephen Holt and my colleague Josh Holt are also in the virtual space with us today. We are appreciative of your presence here today to participate in this special Historic Albina Advisory Board meeting. Today's meeting, we're going to keep it short and concise. We'll have a brief project update from our project director, Ms. Megan Channel. We'll talk a bit just in review about the schedule and cost implications. And then we will move into our cover recommendation and then give a brief overview of what our next steps will be. Next slide, please. You all know these well. Your voice matters. That's why you are here. We wanted to make sure that you all had the opportunity to interact with each other as we went into this important decision point. I don't have to say this. You all always speak your truth. That is also why you all have been selected to be in this space with us, because your authentic self is how we hear all of the issues and concerns and how we move the dial forward to bettering our community. We ask you to listen for understanding. There'll be a number of updates and repeats. Some of us were not in the space on the 17th, but you all know, again, this is an impassioned project. So we ask you to listen for understanding, to deal with the issues, not with people. We have in this process together experienced some discomfort, but thank you for continuing to push forward. We know often in discomfort is the place that we grow. We're looking for an awesome output, expectation, collaboration as we move forward in this project. For this period of time, the short period we have together, we ask you to remain respectfully engaged. And there are many things in our community, as well as on the I-5 Rose Quarter project, that we will not solve today. Hopefully, we will be moving forward with one very important piece, but we ask you to expect and accept non-closure. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Megan Channel.
Thank you, Erica. And again, I'll reiterate the many, many thanks to each of you as the HAAB members, your willingness to join us for this special meeting. I think today's meeting really marks an important milestone for us in the project. And I just, again, continue to be extremely appreciative of the time and energy that you're giving, especially for a special, not typically scheduled meeting. So thank you. I wanted to just do a quick overview, as Erica said, on some of the items that we covered at the meeting at the, last week on Tuesday. First and foremost, going on to the next slide here, that talks about why we're here, what the recommendation is. So again, today, I keep thinking that it's later than it is because I normally meet with you in the evening. So today, we are asking the HAAB to recommend our highway cover decision. And so I just want to be really clear around like what we mean when we say recommendation. So a recommendation would mean that you would like to advance the highway cover design, and we're talking about hybrid 3, And that means that, right now we're at about a 5% design understanding of this highway cover design concept. And in order to understand more of those details, we would need to do more design work of hybrid 3. A recommendation to move forward would also mean that you'd like to proceed with the technical analysis, environmental review of the highway cover design. We'd go through the federally required environmental process with FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, before that design is finalized. Recommendation also means that we would take on more robust cost estimating. I know that there's been a lot of questions around cost from HAAB members, and this would inform our finance plan of how are we paying for it, as well as the diversity plan that is being developed for the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE, and workforce program. And the recommendation also means that we would initiate any necessary agreements with partner agencies or intergovernmental agreements to move forward. And again, much of this work would happen over the course of the next year, but this recommendation is really that pivot point to move us forward in that work. So I also, on the next slide here, want to touch on the hybrid 3 schedule and costs, understanding that there were a number of questions from HAAB members around this as well. So first we'll talk about schedule, and just want to highlight that as we talk about the project schedule, we're talking about the project kind of being broken down into 3 distinct work packages. So that's what you see on the top of the slide here. So on the left side of the screen, or the north side of the project area, we talk about early work package A, or EWP, it's early work package A, and that's really looking at the I-5 mainline improvements that connect to the 405 interchange north of the highway cover area. On the right side of your screen, you've got early work package B, and that is, again, the I-5 mainline improvements that connect to the 84 interchange south of the highway cover area. And then the center portion in yellow, which is known as the main construction package, includes the highway covers, the I-5 mainline improvements underneath the highway covers, and then the surrounding multimodal local street improvements. So what we know about hybrid 3 is that hybrid 3 will take about an additional 10 to 12 months for the design, the technical analysis, the environmental review. But I want to be clear that this can be done concurrently with the design for those early work packages to the north and to the south. And what this means is that it keeps us moving with the design of those packages and primarily starting construction of those packages in 2023. And that keeps us on track with implementing the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise program and the workforce program to address the desire that we've heard from HAAB, as well as our COAC, on getting jobs on the ground as soon as possible, while also still maximizing the land on top of the highway covers. Next piece that I want to quickly highlight is project cost. I know that there's also a number of questions around the cost of hybrid 3. And so I want to share with you the project costs that we have, both for the baseline project, and again, the project that received its federal environmental approval and that was costed in the January 2020 cost to complete report, as well as the cost for hybrid 3. So Natalie, if we could go to the next slide, there we go. Okay. So you'll hear me refer to baseline project. And so just want to take a step back and acknowledge what that includes. And again, the baseline project is what was evaluated in the project's environmental document. So this included 2 separate highway covers. You can see that on the left side of the screen. It also, those highway covers were really intended to carry the roadways across, wider bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and open space. Hybrid 3 on the right side is the design concept posed to you today in terms of a recommendation, and makes modifications to that design. So it includes, again, the 1 continuous cover all the way across, so no gap in the middle. The highway cover would be wider and longer to accommodate 2 to 3 story buildings, and also includes the relocation of the southbound off-ramp to the south of the highway cover. And on the next slide, just want to show you a kind of come back at a slide that we, I know, covered at a prior joint meeting, but just to again highlight that Hybrid 3 does achieve what we heard from you as the HAAB as priorities around maximizing space on the highway cover, completing the street grid, and minimizing construction delays to have the jobs available as soon as possible. So on the next slide, want to just compare again the baseline project cost to Hybrid 3. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see the baseline project cost. And this again is what was reported to the legislature back in January of 2020 and as part of a required cost to complete report. And so the project was assumed to be 715 to 795 million. And again, that included the open space highway covers where 2 to 3 story buildings could be put in limited locations, but not blanketly kind of across the space created by the highway covers. I'll also note that this cost estimate was based on a 15% design level, whereas Hybrid 3, we expect the costs to be about 1.18 to 1.25 billion. And in my next slide following this, we'll get into why. But just want to acknowledge that this does include the cost to increase the length and the width of the highway covers and make them buildable for the 2 to 3 story buildings on top throughout, not just at point locations. There would be an added premium for making the highway covers buildable up to 5 to 6 story buildings. And the additional cost is reflected here on the slide and really defines a combined range identified by the independent cover assessment team, as well as the ODOT project team. I think it's important to note that Hybrid 3 cost is also based on a 5% design level. So while I'm showing these next to each other on the slide, it's really not a true apples to apples comparison. And so it's really the best point of comparison that we have today, but they are estimated at different design levels. Again, we knew more about the baseline project, more information as part of the design than we know for Hybrid 3. So for why that cost increased to Hybrid 3, on the highway covers, again, the baseline project did include open space on top of the highway covers with the 2 to 3 story buildings possible in some locations. Hybrid 3 does increase the strength, the width, the length of the highway covers to accommodate those 2 to 3 story buildings throughout. And the Hybrid 3 also relocates the I-5 southbound on-ramp, so they're off-ramp, so there is an added cost associated with that move. There are new streets that are continued across I-5 on top of the highway covers that were not previously contemplated in the baseline project, specifically Flint, having that full connection across north and south. So there is an added cost there. The added costs also take into account the additional technical studies, the engineering and design that would be done, as well as right-of-way purchases that would be needed to accommodate the design modifications. And then I also want to note that the Hybrid 3 cost also takes into account the escalation of construction cost. And so we assume, with Hybrid 3, we do have that 10 to 12 month delay. So it does push out the length of the construction period. And so instead of assuming 2025 as really our middle year of construction and using that as the escalation point for the dollars, we did push the midpoint out for construction to 2027. And so Hybrid 3 accounts for that escalation of construction costs, that 2-year shift as well. So moving forward about addressing financing, I'll just acknowledge we have a lot more questions than we have answers on this particular piece. We have more work to do on the cost estimating and creating a financing plan that will identify how we pay for it, but just acknowledging that all options are on the table to help fill the funding gap. We do know that we have funding for the project through House Bill 2017, additional funding that is available to us, or I should say additional financing opportunities that are available to us through House Bill 3055, and then the other opportunities that we're seeking around federal funding. We'll know we'll have the governor's help in crafting conversations around federal funding opportunities. And we'll also be looking at what funding is eligible under our state highway trust fund, meaning what specifically the state highway fund can pay for, and what would be needed to have funding coming from other sources. So there is research and work to do on that front as well. At the same time, in terms of the things that we can directly control as part of the project, we're also working with our CMGC, our construction management general contractor team, on different innovations and creative ways to find cost savings to minimize and help close the funding gap as well. So I will pause there. It was a really high level overview of what we discussed at the joint meeting, but want to be respectful of your time and give you the most to have your discussions. So Erica, back to you.
Thanks, Megan. We'll go to the next slide. And to the next slide. And one more.
All right. This is back to
so it is, but I think just if there isn't any particular questions about what Megan shared, we can move forward, but I don't want to skim over that. I see your hand, Ms. Sharon.
A couple of questions, Megan, just so I can have clarification. You showed the estimated costs early on, estimated 715 million to nearly 800 million. The hybrid 3 had significantly higher costs, and I understand that. If those previous estimates were based on 2020, and when we're talking about an arc of change, delay, recommendations that change the configuration, would those potential costs, so that I'm looking for the significant difference? That's the first question. And then the second would the contract for Raymore construction, would that be impacted or affected, since you've talked about increased construction costs? Would that negatively impact, or would there be some need to renegotiate or look at what fair cost and contract for contractors would be as a result of potential delays or estimated delays? So first, the cost differences, and secondly, the question of the contractor, the winning bid, if you will, how would that potentially be affected if you're estimating you're going to have higher construction costs?
Yeah, thanks for that, Sharon. I'll answer your second question first. So in terms of our CMGC team, so Hamilton Sunt joint venture in association with Raymore as our current contractor, they would remain. We would keep the contract with that team moving forward with Hybrid 3. And so there would be no change to their contract. Part of their contract is to continue to work with us, really regardless of what the highway cover scenario is to work forward with us on continuing to refine the cost estimates as we move forward. And so that work would continue. As it relates to your question on the cost difference, I'll just note the 715 to 795 million estimate that was conducted back in, frankly, late 2019 for the report in January of 2020. And, you know, we did our best guess, our best estimate at those costs at that time. There were potential for those costs to change as well as we evolved the project, even if it was just the baseline. Those cost estimates were estimated in $2025. So it was projecting forward based on what we knew for the project schedule at that time. For the Hybrid 3 costs, you know, those are really only based on a 5% design concept. So we know a little bit less about Hybrid 3 than we knew about the baseline project when we're doing this initial cost estimate. We have a lot more work to do, but it is our best estimate at this time on what we understand that cost range to be, knowing that as we move forward with the work of our contractor, they likely will change and evolve.
Is that adequate, Ms. Sharon? Other thoughts or
I
questions?
actually had a third if no one else. I see Sabrina Vaso here, so I can't imagine she won't come up with some questions too. I did want to ask, given the governor and the Portland Public Schools, the question about the relocation of Tubman and potential shared costs, including ODOT's potential piece, will that be a part of factoring in with hybrid fee now also?
So the conversation around Harriet Tubman Middle School that the governor is leading around relocation, those costs are separate and distinct from the project cost, so not accounted for here.
Are there any other questions for Megan in regards to the update that she just shared? Any lingering thoughts or comments? Mr. Washington, I see you.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everybody, or afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Megan, when I was looking at some of those pictures on the covers of one of those elaborate pictures that you had there, it showed that there were some openings in that cover in places. Can you show me again? Because my understanding is that most of the time when I see these renderings, it's showing all one flat piece, all one cover. Okay, so are there going to be openings and segments and stuff like that in this cover placement, like you got there on that picture on the left?
Yeah.
So you will be able to get on those covers and get to the edge of them and look over and see the freeway?
So, Mr. Washington, that was the original design concept, the baseline concept that was studied in the environmental review document for the project. And so that was the baseline is really the original design, and it did have those two separate covers. So as you're saying, you would be standing on the edge of one and looking over to the other. As we move forward in hybrid 3, it is one continuous cover. I'll also say that we as a project have also assumed, as we've kind of progressed this baseline project forward, that one continuous cover makes sense. So hybrid 3 kind of carries that forward, but then also expands it further to the north to allow Flint to cross. But to your point, hybrid 3 connects the two covers. It's just one. You'd be able to walk across.
Okay.
Mr. Campbell, I see your hand.
Hey, and good afternoon, y'all, and thanks for having the flexibility for having us join this. I was just curious about the additional funding outside of just public funding. Is ODOT going to be thinking about receiving private funding, or is it all public?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, for that one. I think all options are on the table at this point. I think our primary focus is around the public opportunities, with what we have eligible within our state funding, and looking at the federal opportunities, particularly with the infrastructure package that's being discussed at the federal level. That said, I think if we have an opportunity for private partnership, I don't know that we would say no to that. So I think all options are on the table.
Thanks for that question. Are there other questions from HAAB members? Seeing none. Natalie, if you could share the slides with us again. And then there we are. And Megan.
Thanks, Erica. So again, today is all about getting to a recommendation. And again, taking into consideration all of the conversations that we've had thus far, with today being a very high-level summary of what was covered last week. Again, we'll be focused on asking you to make a recommendation today, as well as articulating what the next steps will look like and the timing for those. So on those last 2 points, we can go to the next slide. So this is the path forward. So today, again, we're asking you as the HAAB to make your recommendation and share your comments for inclusion in that recommendation. We'll then take the outcome of your conversation today, craft a formal written response, and a written recommendation, and then that will be shared for review with you as committee members. And then ultimately that final recommendation will be shared with the Oregon Transportation Commission in advance of their meeting scheduled for September 9th, where they will be providing the ultimate direction to the project team based on recommendations that they have heard from the HAAB. So with that, we can go to the next slide, and I think I might have covered. Okay, next steps here. This is again articulating the next steps that we would be taking based on recommendations. So again, it's that advancing design, getting back to what does a recommendation mean? Means that we'd be advancing the design, proceeding with the technical and environmental analysis, more cost estimating and finance plan development, and then the intergovernmental agreements. Again, really working through the next year on that. And then the next slide, I think drills in. Oh, okay. I will pause there. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Erica, back to you.
No worries. Thank you. I just want to remind us, based on the approval of our charter, as we began this work together, we agreed we'd be making decisions by consensus, which allows for that inclusiveness, that accountability, for some flexibility. We agreed to facilitation of that. And then that those decisions we would commit to implementing and following through with together. So the process of coming to consensus, there really kind of varying thoughts. There's an unqualified yes. There is a yes with I accept. I see your hand, Mr. Edwards, and there may be some thoughts that you have that you'd like to add for inclusion. As Megan mentioned, we'll be taking all of those thoughts, those we've heard prior, those we hear today, and crafting them into a formal written recommendation that we would send back out to you for your approval, edits, and that sort of thing. And so we want to get into that process. I'm going to call on Mr. Edwards before we get to that formal point. Mr. Edwards, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I guess I had one question, and I think my sister kind of alluded to it, Sister Smith, and has Raymore been contacted, or have there been any discussion with them about what kind of impact this would have on them in regard to the hybrid 3 being used instead of the other alternatives?
Yes, Mr. Edwards, Raymore was part of both the governor-led conversations represented by Jeff Moreland, and then also in the conversations that we've had as part of the project team as our CMGC. So yes.
Thank you.
And Mr. Washington, I see your hand as well.
Yes, in the recommendation that we are giving today, does it go outside the scope of just choosing the cover, or is the recommendation a little bit more comprehensive? Like, for example, if we say, yeah, we recommend the cover, but we don't recommend that you just have the city, say, be the purveyor or overseer of those covers. Could we also get beyond that little recommendation of the cover, but could we also suggest other things that go along in parallel with that, or do you?
Absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Washington. That's part of the yes and. Yes, I'm in favor of hybrid 3, and I recommend you consider this, this, and that. So those thoughts are very important to this conversation, as well as the written recommendation. And we'll want to capture all of those things, all of your thoughts. Again, we've been saying since the beginning, your voice matters. So this is not just about rubber stamping anything. This is about saying, after we've reviewed all of the information, after we've had all of the conversations, even the governor coming to have the convenings, I unequivocally say yes, or I am saying, yes, I accept this. And these are the other things that I would like to see in addition. So yes, Mr. Washington. Any other thoughts or questions before we move forward? I see your hand, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you again. Do we have any input or any consideration for our thoughts in regard to the procurement process as well?
And procurement meaning general contracting?
Yes, meaning the general contracting, the subcontracting, what kind of language is going to be in the contracts in order to meet diversity goals, those kind of things.
Well, I will let Megan answer to that, but I know that the COAC, the Community Oversight Advisory Committee, was formed specifically for that. So there are a number of other community members from the Albina community. They've been in our joint meetings from various construction and the trades. So they are staying along in the process with us, with the HAAB, to continue to hold the CMGC accountable. Megan, if I missed something, I'll let you chime in there as well.
Oh, Erica, you've covered it. That's it. Yeah, it is really the Community Oversight Advisory Committee that has that role.
And Mr. Edwards, again, I would say, as a valued member of this community and this group, there will be opportunities for us to continue to collaborate with the HAAB, for us to have, we've talked about that collaborative approach, to be able to have report outs, for us to be able to share back and forth. So your voice is never silenced, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And to follow up to Mr. Washington's question, I don't know if he was comfortable with the answer, but I didn't get a total answer on his question. Okay.
I'm hoping I can clarify more. Yes, you are able to say, I agree with hybrid 3, and these are our other recommendations, if that is in regards to the governance, other things that you all think are important to this community. Yes, you absolutely can share those thoughts, and they will be included in the recommendation.
And who has the final say on what that looks like in the end?
You all will have an opportunity to review the recommendation. I'll be helping the technical facilitation team pull together all of your thoughts, all of your concerns, things that we have heard up to date as well as today. And then that written recommendation, I'm getting a little further, but in our next steps, that written piece will go back to you, right? And so then you will have a series of days, and we do have the timing issue as we're looking towards the first week of September for the OTC meeting, but you will have an opportunity then to see that document and see if it reflects your thoughts accurately, and to give input, changes, corrections, etc.
Thank you for that. And I would hope that, and I know we're as we get closer, we're going to end up, there's going to be some expedition going on. And I just want to make sure that in the expediting of the process, that we don't miss any steps for us to have input.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we'll talk a bit more about that in our next step. But again, whatever is gathered, all of the written work will be sent back to the HAAB for your input. So it'll be really important. Hopefully you all will have time over the next few days to really digest that document and to make sure that your thoughts are adequately represented.
Again, thank you, Erica.
You're welcome. Mrs. Stell, I see your hand.
How will this voting process go? Are you gonna call on us like one by one, and then we're gonna like say our and part when you call on our vote?
I'm more than happy to do that. Yes, I'd love to. The reason we wanted to have more of you all in the room together so that it was a formal representation and we could have that discussion together. So yes, I will be asking you, do you consider, we can actually move into that, but yes. Other thoughts before we move there? Miss Natalie, will you share that slide once again? Miss Megan, I see your hand.
I just wanted to acknowledge in the chat and that there was a question, who ultimately has the decision-making authority, and just want to be clear that that would be the Oregon Transportation Commission.
I apologize, I missed that. Thank you, Megan.
Yep, happy to help, Erica.
If there are no further questions, and there still is opportunity for discussion, I'd like to move forward with asking if you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission. In an in-person environment, as my colleague suggested, we may have a green card, a yellow card, or a red card, green being unqualified yes, the yellow being yes, and I have these other recommendations to be included. And so with that, I'd love to move forward. Ms. Brenavasa, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Yes, I do.
I appreciate that. Mr. Andrew Campbell, your recommendation of hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Yes, but yeah.
Okay. And in our, I want to make sure that we are including that, and your ands, you'll have an opportunity to share those. If you aren't ready to state them, we will have an opportunity to include them. Mr. Andrew Clark, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission? You may be muted, Andrew.
Oh, hello. Yes.
There you are.
There we are. I do recommend that it's presented to the Transportation Commission with the ability to build buildings over the caps. So 3 to 5 stories, I think, is what's been discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I appreciate it. I see Leslie's vote. She has to go to another meeting. And she will have some ands to include later. So thank you, Ms. Goodlow. I appreciate your presence here today. Mr. Edwards, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Yes, and I have some ands as well. And my primary and is that that the community will have say so or have some strong input and influence over what is developed on the cover and on the land adjacent to. Something that reflects the history of Albina, and something that will provide our future generations with inspiration and education in order to become developers and entrepreneurs and be able to create financial wealth throughout the community.
Yes, sir. So very important. Thank you for that. Ms. Sharon Gary Smith, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Yes, I do. And I was writing out my ands, and Mr. Edwards captured it perfectly for me.
Yes, I love that. We already had Ms. Leslie Goodlow. So Ms. Estelle, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Yes, and that there's a creation of an Albina CDC board as the governance structure. That on the board, a certain number of seats make it so that's a majority community-led board. That a certain number of those seats are also from the HAAB. A certain number of those seats are for the displaced community in outer East Portland. And with those positions are possibly paid with a stipend and terms to be decided later. And I'll also provide those in writing.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Mr. Kevin Modica, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Pastor Richard is not with us. Mr. John Washington, do you recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission?
Well, I like the way Modique said it, just yes. But, you know, and the and would be all of those things that have been said. But it's kind of hard to capture the and when we look at the structural reality of who's going to govern this environment, you know. And but one of the things I am strongly want to accentuate is that if the players are not in the room playing, then they shouldn't have governance ability over this project. And I don't care what y'all can say, however y'all want to word that. However, the bottom line is the same old stuff, you know. But I'd like to see a little bit more controlled, a little bit more, so that the lesser amongst us gets an opportunity to get a come up, and that we all boats get rised in this project, not just a few, but all boats in our community get rised in this thing. So, and I'm a proponent for that aspect. So that's what my yes and is about.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. With that, Pastor Richard Probasco had a meeting he could not shift, and he did convey his yes, and he will be sharing his and thoughts. I will follow up with our other two. Based on our attendance and vote and our discussion today, we have consensus moving forward as a recommendation from the Historic Albina Advisory Board to recommend hybrid 3 be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission. I appreciate your work on this. This is just the first of many things we'll be calling upon you on. I'm sorry, Miss Natalie, you can move to the next slide. And the next. So as we mentioned to you all earlier, we will be taking the comments from prior conversations with you, comments from today, and drafting a written recommendation. We are with hope and anticipation planning to have that initial draft to you by August 25th. At that point, we would be prepared for your and those of you, I saw Srinivasa, your comment in the chat, those who have written comments that they'd like to have included in that, please be prepared to have those back into my email box by Monday the 30th. So that would give us over the weekend to be able to draft our thoughts and make recommendations and corrections. Thank you, Mr. Clark. I see your comment in the chat. And you all will have input in that and in letting that final recommendation be put forward. As Megan mentioned, it will go to the Oregon Transportation Commission a few days prior to their September 9th meeting. But your written recommendation will be presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission at their September 9th meeting. We are still planning to connect to elevate voices in the Historic Albina Advisory Board. So we'll be looking to schedule a regular touch point with you beginning in September as we move forward with other aspects of the I-5 Rose Quarter project that we are looking to get your valued input on. Next slide, please. I don't know if Megan has any further comments. I see your hand, Mr. Edwards. I'll yield to you before my thanks. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. I do have one more comment. I just wanted to know, I guess my concern is that there's going to be a comprehensive list from all of the HAAB committee members. And my concern is that I would hope that all of our issues and concerns and suggestions would be prioritized, not one over the other, because these are all important concerns and issues and suggestions that we bring from our community. You know, we're not, we're trying to be representative, and we do talk to members of our community about these particular issues, and we bring feedback. So I would just hope that all of our issues are paramount, and they're all going to be number one. There's not going to be a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in priority listing, that they would all have importance and value as none above the other.
Thank you for that, Mr. Edwards. I completely agree. Your thoughts are all very valued, and you have my commitment in helping to facilitate this process, to steer in that way. All of your input is greatly valued, and so you have my commitment to make sure of that. Prior to our adjourning today, again, I just want to extend my extreme thanks for your flexibility. I know it's difficult often. You all have busy lives and other commitments, other things that you're doing to bring economic restorative justice into the Black community here in the city of Portland. So I'm grateful for your response quickly, for making the adjustment to be here with this afternoon, and for being authentic, for helping us all to grow. Not just the Rose Quarter Project team, me as a facilitator, all of you bring something so great. I am honored to serve with you in this capacity. Mr. Washington, I see your hand.
Erica, I also wanted to reciprocate to you. You know, I've been watching this process now for quite some while, and I appreciate your professionalism in this. You know, you've done a stellar job in maintaining a process that is not easy. You know, I'm a facilitator myself, and I respect the fact that you come into this arena and you've maintained a professionalism in that process and made this somewhat of an enjoyable experience. So I just wanted to let you know, thank you very much for doing your job.
Thank you so much, Mr. Washington. I appreciate that. I'm open. I'm growing together with you all. You make this community better. You make me better. This project, generations will be better because of this process, and we have much work to do together. So with that, if there's no further thought, I thank you for giving me some of your lunch hour, and we will be communicating with you over the next few days.
Please, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.